Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I just wanted to start off by saying that it's my responsibility as a public platform to put out what I hope to encourage in the world. And of course I don't have a huge reach, but I still think it's important when putting anything out to the public that it's always in a positive light and it's always what I'm hoping to see become of the world as well. And going back to that first grade saying, treat others the way that you want to be treated, and of course I want to kind of put just positivity out there. So that's kind of my outlook on having a public platform. So really quick, before I upload the second session of that Cryptorchid horse, I wanted to talk a little bit about the first video because I know I haven't posted a training series in a while following along with a horse that wasn't necessarily a Mustang makeover horse. The last ones you saw were kind of the first 10 days of Kiwi, which was pretty cool, but I haven't put out a series since then, so I'm getting back into it. I have probably about between 5 to 10 videos on this horse that I'm going to release, and of course they're different sessions. So session 2 is from the same day, it's just I gave him a couple hours break and then went back and worked with him again, and you can tell from all the videos I upload that they're pretty short sessions. Nothing is really long. But I wanted to talk about my first session with him and kind of my reflections on how I worked with the horse and all of that, because I did receive a couple of comments and suggestions and I definitely appreciate them, but I'm going to explain why I either have tried those methods before or I no longer think that they fit with my program. So I will start by saying that the way that I handled when he did take a few more forward advancing steps towards me, I 100% would do that all over again. So if you remember back in 2019, those of you who have followed me for a while, Roulette did the same thing on day 2 and I feel like it was a pretty similar reaction response from me. So I've definitely dealt with horses before that take advantage of the backing up draw to invite them in, and of course you'll notice in session 2 with this horse that I was working with that I changed my approach slightly to match him and his personality. But of course I'm not going to micromanage the horse, I'm going to work with them and try of course the easiest way, my go-to way, and then I'll adjust from there. So what you saw in the first session was, again, my very first session with him, getting a feel of him, understanding him, seeing how he reacts, and then change my plan from there. So a few of the things that I wouldn't do that were suggested is I would never hit the horse in the head with the stick. I don't believe in that. I don't know if that's going to make too much of a difference. I didn't feel like I was at too much of a risk. I knew exactly what was happening and what I was looking for, and again, I could feel coming on that he was kind of getting a little bit pushy, but there's still no reason to hit the horse in the head. You'll see that the way that I reacted worked pretty efficiently because in the future sessions, spoiler alert, he never charges again. So it kind of got rid of that one problem, just standing your ground and lightly pushing him off. You don't need to hit the horse in the head for this. Of course, I know some people have their methods and ways, but for me, that is something that I personally would never do. Of course, I'm going to admit that I'm not perfect. I make plenty of mistakes, but I will admit that I'm not perfect, and maybe I have even tried some of these things that I'm going to talk about that I wouldn't do and why I wouldn't do them. But I know now from experience and working with a bunch of horses that these aren't always the answers to how to react and respond to them. The second thing is, I'm not going to break their spirit mentally first. I don't know if I have done this before, but it doesn't sound like something along the lines of what I believe in working the most effectively with the horse. There's no reason to get them physically exhausted or even really break their mental spirit, and I'm not quite sure how to do that. I guess you could try to assert your dominance, which of course is another thing that I don't really like doing. I found that there's a lot more easier communicated ways to the horse to work them rather than just coming at them with all of this energy and power, and then, you know, the first time that they make a mistake, I'm not going to get all big and loud and yell at them, because why? You can do something with a small correction. There's no reason to assert your dominance. Now, of course, you don't want to be getting ran over by your horse and pushed over by them. That's all about communication and clearness. There's no need to assert dominance. That was another suggestion made. But now I'm going to get into why I reacted the way that I reacted with that horse. First, I'm going to read really quick about this horse directly from the person who gave them to me to train themselves. A few things I'll clear up is he is not a Mustang. I never claimed he was a Mustang. He's not branded. He's not BLM. He is not a Mustang at all. However, he is a feral horse. Feral and wild are interchangeable terms. He is not a Mustang though, and I'll read more about what he is specifically. The way his halter was put on was he was put into a squeeze chute similar to what they do with the BLM Mustangs and haltered like that and then let go and out. The way that they can tell he's a Cryptorchid, which means he only has one testicle left and it is inside of him, it is not dropped. To be honest, I didn't check. They told me it was a Cryptorchid, so that's what I'm going to go with, and you can see from some of his behavior and kind of how he's built and his muscle tone has developed, he still has a little more oomph in him than a gelding would. So here is the message directly from the owner about the horse. Just an FYI, the horse came from the Gila herd, I think it's pronounced like that, which was rescued in South Dakota along with 900 other wild horses. They were all offspring of rescued wild Mustang herds. So, not a BLM Mustang themselves, but again, just a feral horse that's been left out that came from Mustangs. They lived like their ancestors in a sanctuary that could no longer take care of them, which basically means that they lived in a huge open pasture, field, whatnot, and then this horse was gathered up. He's as feral as he can get, just wasn't branded because he was on a sanctuary. And then she said, don't you agree that Skydog, Montgomery Creek, Lifesavers, Return to Freedom, Gems all have wild Mustangs? Those are all Mustang rescues, but they aren't necessarily branded. Well, he lived just like theirs, only didn't get the care he needed to survive. This little stud is at Sweepo Horses, and he was not worked with to any extent before Sam worked with him. He had a halter put on in a shoe, and that was the extent of his handling, I was told. And then there's a little bit more to the message, but it's not necessarily relevant to the horse's past history. That is all about this horse. This is directly from the source. He is feral, he is wild. Those of you saying that, no way he can be wild horses want to run away. You probably haven't worked with enough of them or seen enough of them to know that. So they all have different reactions, just like humans, all horses are different. Not all Mustangs are going to be running away, scared. He had more of a presence, which is not uncommon. I've had a couple other horses like this. Again, relating back to Roulette, she was a good one. She's a good example to compare to this horse. Now, he has had people be around him throwing him hay. So after he was rescued from that, I know he was brought to another facility where he was in a smaller size pasture or paddock and tossed hay. So he knows to associate humans with food. So there is that. Moving along really quick, gonna get through these topics. Micromanaging, that's basically not letting the horse make a mistake or have a fail. It's kind of just adjusting everything super small and quick to make sure that there's no chance of them failing, and they never really understand the concept. Super important for me that I'm really clear with my body language with my horses, and I let them make mistakes. If I feel something coming on, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to keep going along how I am. There's no reason to change quite yet. They haven't done anything. I'm not going to try to punish them for no reason. I have to let them make the mistake, and then I can work from there. So if I don't ever let them make the mistake, that's typically where a huge blow up comes along later down the line. So micromanaging, and I know there's a great bigger definition to this. I learned a little bit about this from Mustang Maddie. She's a really good one to listen to and learn from, but there's a lot of definitions about micromanaging. It's definitely something interesting to read about with horses, so I recommend looking up micromanagement and learning a little bit about it. The other thing is unnecessary excessive pressure. This is something that I probably used in the past, definitely not needed now. I found a easier way to communicate for the horse that's easier on me and easier on the horse and gets us to that end connection quicker. There's no reason to bring up your emotions or your energy. Again, I stand behind the way that I reacted when he took a couple of those more advancing steps towards me. I changed my method. I no longer tried to join up with him, which is when you back up to create space for that horse to come in. Now, a lot of people are commenting on the backing up. Backing up is a great way to get your horse to face up with you, like I was saying, for join up and everything. It's really good with wild Mustangs, which also I transfer over to my warm bloods or any feral horse I'm working with to get their attention on you. So when I start walking backwards, if they give me even an ear or an eye, I'll stop moving, I'll release, and then I kind of play with my body language. I'll move side to side to see if I can get their feet unstuck and unglued, and eventually I'll be yielding their hindquarters at liberty, moving their fore end at liberty, all off of body language. So yes, I do use a lot of draw. I also specialize in liberty training, so it's kind of just a habit for me to use that, but you'll notice that I changed a little bit by the end of session 1 and in session 2, and I no longer went to that drawing position. Just like what I was talking about, when I first start with a horse, I'm going to use my go-to method, and then once I get to see who they are and how they react and how they think, then I change it a little bit. Of course, they need to learn how to react and manage pressure. That's super essential to life. But at the start, I'm just teaching them to trust me and that I'm not a predator, that they can look into me and I'm not going to attack them. Now, of course, when I backed up and he came into me that time, I invited him in, but then he came past that bubble, so I stood my ground and I was like, hey, no, keep moving along, that's not what I asked for. And he never tried it again. I recently read an article about Warwick Schriller's, he talked about horses, and when you go into their space, they're the ones, I hate saying this because a lot of people will take this the wrong way, but they're the ones in charge. They decide the next action from there, and you have to respect that. But now if you're standing still and the horse comes into your space, you're the one in charge. You decide how to respond. Now, I'm not wording that completely right. You're going to want to look at his content and stuff to see a little bit about that. But I've been really fond of his methods lately, and they make a lot of sense to me. Of course, I'm not going to get pushed over. I'm not going to get bit. Of course, I'm going to push the horse away if I see them advancing at me in an unsafe manner, but I'm not gonna overreact by any means. I'm not gonna push them around. I don't need my horse to go around the round pen 3 times at a gallop or a canter, or 10 times or 15, whatever, for them to understand. It was effective enough for me to push him away and then invite him back in again, and good to go. Over time, I feel like I've developed a pretty good grip on understanding and reading horses. I spend a lot of time doing that, working on that, even just with really any horses, even just watching them in the pasture and their interactions and how their body language works with other horses or when they're on their own is super important to me. Of course, I still have so much more to learn and know, but I'm gonna stand behind exactly how I reacted with this horse. There was no need to add any unnecessary extra pressure. So in just a final piece and note, of course, this video, most of you are probably like, oh, I don't really want to watch, but I figured I'd put it up there for those of you that want to talk about methods and just discuss a little bit about that first session video. Of course, you can learn from anyone, whether it be what to do or what not to do, but there's always a positive, you're always learning. However, I will willingly take time to learn from those that I respect, which is most people. Constructive criticism is wonderful, but just like with horses, your approach can say loads about you. So I think that might be a good topic for a future raw road trip talk. So thank you guys for watching this video. Sorry it's a little bit longer than I hoped it would be, but I just wanted to explain a little bit more about the method and why I responded the way I did. Super good topic. Someone asked a really good question if watching back that footage, if I would have reacted the same way, and the short answer is yes. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.